Hello, everyone. I'm Curtis Roach, and welcome to the first ever episode of iGamingFuture's Leadership Series. This will be the first of many bite-sized videos designed to give the industry just a snapshot of what's happening at the moment, and more importantly, what may be coming around the corner so we can be best prepared. Today, we have a very special guest, Ed Birkin, Senior Gaming Consultant for H2 Gambling Capital. Ed, how are you today?
I'm fine, thanks, Curtis, and thanks for having me on.
Fantastic. Great to have you. Great to have you. Things been busy as usual, I suppose?
Yeah, it's been very busy. I don't think necessarily because of COVID, but ever since that started, it's just interesting. The industry has been sky high, and obviously with COVID, it's just meant all the data analysis has been a lot more difficult, looking at everything line by line, month by
Yeah,
month.
yeah,
But
definitely.
better to be busy than not.
I agree. I agree. I agree. I mean, for sure, especially in iGaming, things have been really skyrocketing. I think in America, especially, there's been a lot of activity. I'm sure that's been keeping you busy too. I mean, one of the key things we've been seeing over there is with all the different states that's opening up and regulating iGaming as well as sportsbook. I mean, from the kind of statistics that you've been seeing and the activity going on over there, which vertical would you say is growing faster?
Yeah, well, I suppose overall, just the sheer number of states regulating sports betting, then that's growing faster. But in terms of
Okay,
the individual states, when iGaming goes, I mean, iGaming is growing very quickly. So
right.
we've had a few false dawns. I remember in 2013 when New Jersey launched iPoker, and there's some people in the industry talking about these huge numbers for the market, and it did nothing really for
Yeah.
quite a long time. But if you look at Michigan, which launched at the beginning of the year, I mean, the first 5 months of this year, they've done $95 million of gross win in online sports betting.
Wow.
And in the same period for iGaming, they've done almost $400 million. So, you look at the UK and you expect the iGaming market to be, a bit bigger than the sports betting, maybe one and a
Yeah.
half times the size or something. But,
Yeah.
4 times the size is just something that we definitely didn't expect. And I'm sure if anyone tells you they expected it, then they're lying.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, in regards to the iGaming, I mean, would you say that growth is uh, directly limited to just the closure of the land-based casinos, or are there any other factors at play that are kind of, driving this growth that we're seeing?
I mean, clearly the closure of the land base, I think, has had some benefit,
Yeah.
but not to the extent of the growth we're seeing. I think a lot of it is actually being almost supply driven to a certain extent in
Okay.
terms of how much of the advertising and bonusing that's being done. I mean, across iGaming and sports betting, some of the bonusing is just off the charts. You're getting more than 100% of revenues being given as bonuses. So people
Yeah.
have run negative net wins.
Yeah.
Some quarters the operators are spending more on advertising than they are on their revenues. It's yeah, they're just throwing them out there, and it's just because of the sheer scale and potential of the market for both
Yeah.
sports betting and iGaming, but iGaming, I suppose, in particular,
Mhm.
um, is that operators just want to get market share and say, hey, don't look at our earnings, just look at
Yeah.
our revenue and our market share. And being a customer in the US right now is probably the best place you could ever be, because you're
Right.
not going to get those bonuses or promotions anywhere else.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I mean, keeping it on the US, I suppose one of the things that again has been a very popular product and still growing is live sports betting and in play. And it's still, some would say, a relatively new concept for the US consumers. How have adoption rates been for this vertical in particular? What do you see that kind of growing to in the future? Does it have the potential to get to some of the other levels we've seen in other more established, more mature regions?
Yeah, so I mean, Oregon, for instance, they
Yeah,
report it separately, and they report it as 48% of handle and 33% of gross winners being in play. So
amazing.
we've got about 35% of gross win being in play in the US in 2020, which it isn't too far below the 41% globally. But if you
Hmm.
look at the Europe, for instance, it's up at almost 60% of gross win.
Yeah,
And in 5 years, we have the US getting to 65% of gross win, which is probably about 80% of handle being in play. So by far the highest globally. And it's really a makeup of, I believe their sports are very much suited to the stop-start nature of the sports. why is in play so much more popular for the likes of basketball and tennis in Europe than it is for other more flowing sports.
Right.
Actually, an interesting stat I read the other day, I was looking at about stoppages in a football match, soccer match, I suppose you call it. And in the Premier League last year, I think out of the 90 minutes, on average, the ball was in play for around 55 minutes out of 90.
So half the game almost is no.
Almost. But then I looked at American football, and I can't remember exactly how long these games tend to be.
Yeah.
But out of the entire game, I think the Wall Street Journal did publish something a couple of years ago. The average play is 11 minutes. So that just goes to show the stop-start and how long you've got to kind of do the in play, and it's that kind of stop-start activity that just makes it such a great product potentially for in-play betting.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's a step further to that, even with micro markets as well. And I mean, is that something that you've seen much of in terms of its contribution to the general in-play market?
Not yet, and it'll be interesting. Okay. It's a bit like player props. So
right,
we did a deep dive analysis about sporting integrity, which has been released, and we're looking at some of the in-play betting around that, and still in the European market at the very least. It is about the match results, next team to score a goal or over and under goals, those kind of things. Right. There's very, very little activity on individual players. Obviously in tennis or something where it's one player, then it is on them. But in the team sport, there is very little. Whereas given the amount of statistics you have in the US sports, I think that'll be really interesting to see how much, individual player betting there will be rather than team betting, because it's something that hasn't come through in European sport at all, really.
Right. I'd love to have a look at that too, for sure. And one of the quite unique things as well about America, and we will move away from that in a sec, but just while we was talking about it, one of the unique things is that their affiliate market is actually licensed and regulated, which is something that we don't see in many regions around the globe. And some industry commentators say that one of the drawbacks or potential risks of having an affiliate license market is the fact that it might actually encourage more unlicensed gaming through rogue affiliates, still, attracting traffic. I mean, is there any evidence to that that's been, that you've seen at all in regards to the US black market activity?
No, I think with the US, we have to really understand how the black market works. So it's very different to almost every other country. So what we would call the grey market, where you'd have an operator that's licensed in Curacao or Costa Rica, for instance, operating without a US license into the US, they will be using affiliate sites and things like that to get traffic. But the vast majority of illegal gambling in the US is black market activity. So how that would work is it's about 8 times the size of the grey market. And how that works is you may have a land-based bookmaker who you do your financial transactions with, who may be at your country club or college, and then he gives you a website and a code to type in a password to make your actual place your bets and do all the back end of there. So you pay the cash to your bookie, but it goes online. But those sites that you're actually going on to place your bets, you won't find them anywhere on Google. So Sunset Bets, for instance, if you type in sunsetbets.com, you'll go onto a login page. If you type Sunset Bets into Google, you will not find it. And they work hard to not be seen. So these black market sites will not use affiliates because that's not how they want to be used.
Right.
So there are some grey market ones which potentially would use affiliates, but the vast majority of the kind of illegal US betting is done through word of mouth. It's not done through. They don't want to be able to be found online and closed down. They hide themselves as much as they possibly can. But in Europe, there are, without a doubt, you do have to go through affiliate sites to use these websites. I mean, if you're looking at lots of countries do block websites, and you will have an operator. I don't want to name any, so let's just say like cupoftea.com, and that will get blocked, and then it'll be cupoftea1.com, and you'll go through, and what happens is you have to go to the affiliate sites, they'll advertise it, you click on the link, and it may be teacupof23.com. So it's nothing you'd actually be able to type in yourself. You have to go through an affiliate site to find it. So yeah, for a lot of markets to get to the grey market, the offshore,
Yeah.
has to be done through affiliate sites, because typing in the actual website just doesn't work. It gets blocked. For the US, that works for a certain part of the market, the grey market, but the vast majority of illegal operating, the black market, they purposely spend a lot of money to stay hidden online. So you need to know to be able to get onto them.
Okay, understood. So just moving swiftly on, because I know we don't have a lot of time today, but looking slightly north of the border at Canada, there's been a lot going on over there as well recently, and they recently passed a law on single event sports betting. Well, it's looking like it's going to be passed, actually, if I'm not mistaken. What impact do you think this will have on the market? Is this going to be the next big driver to get Canada to its full potential in terms of sports betting?
Yeah, well, it's almost as if the choreographics is something we've just been working on. So, given the recent news,
almost.
So, I mean, our numbers we've got, and we've based it, a lot on what's happening in the US, etc., in certain different markets. But we reckon at the moment, if you have the same monopoly structure that there is, you're going to have retail gross win up about 30% because of this, and online growing about 50% because of the single sports betting. However, if you were to go down the route of a commercial market, so what Ontario proposed, then we've got them, they're retail in at the moment, but we've got their gross win of 100 million Canadian dollars at the moment, going to 1.5 billion by 2030.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's the kind of, so if we assume that all provinces went commercially, which isn't going to happen, then you're going to have the market increasing fivefold to about 4 billion Canadian dollars by 2030. And that's just a function of a better product. You're going to have the offshore operators who are operating quite openly in Canada. So I believe that they're able to, the licensors, the advertising quite freely. They'll come on shore, so that helps. And then all this promotional activity and bonusing, and and that will just drive both supply and demand to get to those much higher levels. So, yeah, single sports, big impact on the market, say online as it currently stands, up kind of 50% just from having single sports. But if you then started moving towards a more commercial, operator with freedom to advertise, etc., and bonusing, that's when the whole thing just really takes off, and you're looking to say like a fivefold increase in those markets rather than 50%.
Wow! So a gaming explosion in Canada set to happen then. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And same with iGaming. If Ontario again started iGaming, and there's certain. If you look at Atlantic Lottery, for instance, they've launched an online casino, but they haven't advertised it. They're all pretty conservative. Again, if you had a fully advertised open market with the iGaming, then again, that would just take things to another level. So even though it's allowed in many places, there's a very much difference between having a conservative monopoly that wants to restrict it compared to what you're seeing in Michigan of, hey, we may be getting 400 million in gross gaming revenue, but we've given 300 million in bonuses.
Right. Understood. Okay, so the next area or region, should I say, that I wanted to talk about was Germany, because as and I'm sure a lot of our watchers or viewers will know, it's been a very frustrating regulatory environment for some time in Germany, but there has been some movement, and as I said, although it is a challenging jurisdiction, there could potentially be some life injected into the German sportsbook market that would allow more operators to legally compete. How is that affecting sports betting activity, or is it too early to tell?
I think at the moment, sports betting, what we're hearing in the market is sports betting is holding up better than they thought. There's expecting this initial dip. Not all the regulations have come into play yet in terms of the restrictions. I mean, the gaming market, iGaming market, for the operators have complied and turn off table games and restricted their slots. That's collapsed. We think they're down about 50 to 70% revenues from that, as they've just gone to offshore operators who aren't complying. But the sports betting is holding up okay. I think it probably will go down a bit at first when you have the strict implementation of the restrictions of products, the mandatory deposit limits, etc. But longer term, we've now got the certainty around the market, and it's a meaningful market size. And I think that we're going to, from maybe a slightly lower base, start to see some pretty reasonable growth. I mean, when you've got the likes of, Entain with a BWin brand out there, Bet365 and Tipico, all coming getting licensed on shore.
Yeah.
Having the major operators with the major brands on shore just shows that they obviously believe this it's a market to be in. And no matter how critical any of the operators have been about any of the regulations over time, they've always said, this is a market that we see having a bright future.
Yeah, definitely a good sign for sure. But probably not the same growth levels that we were just talking about in Canada, I suspect.
No, I mean, I think Canada's coming from this low base. I mean, the tax rate is still pretty high in Germany, and there are restrictions. It's not seen higher tax rates succeed, but it's really, some of the deposit limits and some restrictions on products, and cross sell to some of the iGaming as well. So the little things you don't necessarily look at initially that they're going to hamper the market potentially, but. I think there's a lot of pent up demand, and the big operators there, they'll make it work.
I'm sure they will. Another region that I wanted to get your opinion on was LatAm. I don't know how we can have a conversation without at least touching upon it. Lots going on over there. Some of the key countries such as Peru, Colombia, and certain parts of Argentina. A lot is happening in terms of iGaming growth. I mean, which countries? Because there's a lot of headlines and new countries, opening up their markets and giving licenses, but one thing that doesn't lie is the numbers. So, I mean, which countries are we really seeing the most growth from that region? And what would you say the driving factors as well?
I think Brazil, coming up in regulation, Brazil, that's the one that everyone's focused on. Just Entain's got a big business there, and they talked about very strong growth they're seeing there again in this latest Q2. Got a big business there, and LatAm's a market that all the major operators are now talking about, kind of focusing on as their next place. I think Betson's quite far ahead there. So Peru, they're actually they're sponsoring the Liga Un football, and I think they're actually changing the name of it to the Betson League.
Wow,
football.
That's amazing.
They call it Liga. I don't know if it's Un. That's French, isn't it? Liga Uno Betson.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
They've talked about it in Colombia. Argentina is one that we'd like to get more excited about, but it is provincially done, so that just makes it a lot more difficult. And I think we've been talking about. I remember talking about a potential license in Buenos Aires, maybe for party gaming at the time, for as long as we've been talking about German regulations.
So a while
coming through. So definitely it's going to be strong growth. I think the winners there will be very successul. It is still a relatively small market, so everything is coming off a very low base. But when you look around it globally, it is probably the US is the big growth market and big market prize, but it is incredibly expensive, and there's going to be a lot of losers who spend a lot of money and don't get the market share that they want. And I think some of the people who aren't already in there in a big way, maybe looking at LatAm and going, this is the place to be. This is the next big growth market, and we can really get a presence there.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you mentioned Brazil right at the beginning of your response there, and we've actually seen a lot of operators, well, a few in particular, that are incorporating daily fantasy sports products into their portfolios, especially, as I said, in the Brazilian area. I mean, how well has this vertical performed in Brazil or in the wider LatAm region?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have exact numbers about how well DFS has done. I think that people are using it to try and build up their customer base ahead of legal sports betting. What I would say, I don't really think that DFS has been hugely successful in any markets that have had, widespread legal sports betting. I know in the US they're talking, DraftKings talking about it still, growing, I think, strongly as it's done in the last 3 years. So they've kind of. They had that before, and people still like it and using it as well as sports betting. But when people try to bring it to the UK, etc., it's just, when you've got real money sports betting, it's almost like, why do you want DFS? Unless, but for certain sports, it works a lot better than others. So for NFL and baseball and everything. That's what I understand how it works more than it does for soccer, or tennis or things like that. So personally, I don't think it's going to be a meaningful. I think it could be a good short-term acquisition tool, but I don't see it being a meaningful revenue driver in Brazil. But I've been wrong on many things before, so I'm sure some of the operators will tell me I'm talking rubbish.
Perhaps. Well, I guess time will tell. And talking of time, Ed, I wish we had a lot more. We could probably talk about so many other regions. That's things happening around the world. But unfortunately, that's probably the last question for today. So I wanted to say, thank you so much for your time. It's really appreciated. If any of the viewers or anyone out there wanted to find out any more in-depth statistics or country information, is there any way that they could do that in terms of getting in touch with yourself or anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, or probably best just to email me directly.
Okay, then.
Ed.Birkin, BIRKIN @h2gc.com.
Okay, great.
And you can get anything. But thank you for having me.
Definitely.
Always dodgy to be on the pilot episode. You can blame me if it doesn't take
I might be.
It's good to have been on, and I look forward to seeing the rest of the series with, I'm sure, a lot more intelligent people joining you.
Thank you so much, Ed. And I just want to say, guys, thank you so much. That's been our first episode of the iGamingFuture Leadership Series, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. Cheers. Bye.